On Father's Day, I thought my daughter had sent me something special, a gesture to remind me she still cared. But the second Laura's eyes landed on the box, her entire face changed. Color drained from her cheeks, her voice was low, tense, almost trembling. "Don't open it." I stopped cold, halfway to the kitchen, my fingers tightening on the cardboard. "What? Why not?" She didn't look at me, didn't even blink. Her gaze was locked on the package as though it were something poisonous. "Can't you see?" Confused, I set it down on the coffee table and leaned closer. That's when I saw them, tiny, deliberate holes punched into the cardboard, perfectly spaced, barely noticeable unless you were hunting for them. "Breathing holes," Laura whispered, her voice cracking. She took a step back as if distance could keep her safe. The words slammed into me like ice water. My stomach dropped. "Breathing holes?" This time, her tone was sharper, urgent, carrying an edge of fear I'd never heard from her. "Something alive is in there, Michael." I stared at the box, my pulse pounding in my ears. The warm June sunlight spilling across our Raleigh living room suddenly felt cold, sterile, like it belonged to a different world. And then I heard it so faint at first. I thought I imagined it a subtle shifting, like paper brushing paper. Then silence. I froze, every muscle locked. It came again, louder. A hiss, slow, deliberate, menacing. Laura's hand shot out, gripping my forearm so tightly it hurt. "Did you hear that?" I swallowed hard and nodded, rage and disbelief tangling in my chest. The hiss dragged on this time, longer, darker, followed by a muffled rustle, as if whatever was inside was repositioning itself, ready. There was no return address. A Sunday delivery someone had spent extra just to make sure this thing got to us today. This wasn't love. This wasn't family. This was a threat wrapped in cardboard. And deep down, I didn't just suspect who sent it, I knew. If this story touched your heart, press 1 inch the comments. If you think it could have been handled differently, press 2. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? Before that package even showed up, the air in our house had already been poisoned. 6 days earlier, my daughter Brittany stood in the middle of our living room, her voice so sharp it could cut bone. "Dad, do you even understand? I need the money now, not after you're gone." The sound of the coffee mug hitting the floor was instant, Laura's hands trembling so badly she couldn't even try to catch it. It shattered on the hardwood, spraying scalding coffee across the rug we'd saved for months to buy for our 20th anniversary. I clutched the inheritance documents so tightly the paper wrinkled under my fingers. "Brittany, I am not an ATM. You'll get your inheritance when the time comes, not before." Tyler, her husband, didn't even bother to stand. He sprawled further into our leather sofa, smirking like a man watching a free show. "Come on, Mike. She's your only daughter. What's a few thousand to help us out?" A few thousand. The gall. Last month it had been his gambling debts. Before that, Brittany's spree on high-end handbags and investment vacations. Every request was bigger, bolder, and coated with entitlement. "I've been helping you for 3 years straight," I said, pushing myself up from the armchair, knees stiff but my temper burning hot. "My retirement fund isn't your personal bank." Laura hovered in the doorway, twisting a dish towel until her knuckles turned white. "Please, everyone, calm down. We can talk about this reasonably." Brittany spun toward her mother, her voice rising to a knife's edge. "Reasonably? He's sitting on hundreds of thousands while we're drowning in debt. Debt you created." I shot back, each word cold and deliberate. "Debt from your own choices." Her eyes went hard steel over ice and her voice dripped pure venom. "Greedy, selfish, unloving. Ew. 43 years of 12-hour days, of back pain, of missed birthdays, of holding this family together through recessions and layoffs, all so she could have a safe home, a good school, a comfortable life. And this was my repayment?" Tyler leaned forward, elbows on his knees, like he was delivering some piece of wisdom. "Look, old man, you're not getting any younger. Why not enjoy sharing your wealth while you're alive to see it appreciated?" Old man. I'd been called worse in my life, but not by someone I'd fed, housed, and tolerated for far too long. The words tasted foul. I had built something worth keeping, something I intended to protect. But with every visit, I felt less like a father and more like a target with a wallet. When I refused again, Brittany's voice cracked, not with grief, but with rage. "You'll regret this. When you're sick and need someone to take care of you, remember this moment." Her Her heels struck the hardwood like gunfire as she stormed toward the door, Tyler trailing behind her. They didn't slam it, they left it hanging wide open, a deliberate insult, an unspoken dare. For days afterward, Laura and I spoke only in fragments. We'd had arguments with Brittany before, but this one sat in the air like smoke you couldn't breathe away. So when that package arrived the following Sunday morning, no return address, special delivery, perfectly timed so we'd be home. I didn't need to wonder if it was coincidence. I knew exactly what kind of message it was meant to send. I didn't touch the box again. Every instinct screamed to get it out of the house, but I forced my hands to stay at my sides. Instead, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My voice came out, steady, colder than I expected. "We've got a suspicious package, something alive inside. It was delivered this morning, no return address, and it's making sounds." The dispatcher's tone sharpened immediately. "Sir, can you describe the sounds?" I glanced at Laura. She gave the slightest nod, her face pale. "Hissing," I said. My jaw locked before I added the obvious comparison. Saying like a snake felt like daring the universe to prove me right. "Any visible damage or leaks?" "No," I said, "but there are punctures. Breathing holes." Her voice left no room for argument. "Understood. Officers will be there in 10 minutes. Keep your distance from the package, and do not attempt to open it." 10 minutes. 10 hours. 10 years. Time warped as the hissing came and went in uneven bursts, sometimes followed by a faint, deliberate rustle, as though something inside was shifting, waiting. Each time, Laura flinched like she'd been struck. When the doorbell finally rang, my pulse spiked. The man standing there was built like a wall, Officer Daniel Ortiz. His eyes scanned the porch, then the living room as I let him in. "That's it?" he asked, gesturing at the box on the coffee table. "That's it," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. He crouched, studying the sides without touching. "Breathing holes," he confirmed. "Could be anything from a reptile to a small mammal." The rustling kicked up again, louder this time, more agitated. Ortiz stood, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling animal control. They've got the right gear." 20 minutes later, a man in a khaki uniform walked in, carrying a reinforced animal carrier. "Morning. Let's see what we've got." His name tag read Ethan Cole. He slid on thick gloves and tilted the box. The hissing exploded fast, sharp, unmistakable. "That's a snake," he said, calm as if reading a grocery list. "Let's open her up carefully." I stood frozen as he sliced the tape in one smooth motion. The flaps opened, and there it was, coiled tight, eyes fixed, scales glowing a burnt orange streaked with deep red blotches. "Corn snake," Ethan said, expertly lifting it into the carrier. "Non-venomous. Beautiful specimen, actually. Someone paid good money for this." Laura stepped back another foot, her voice clipped. "Why would anyone send something like that?" Ethan locked the carrier with a snap. "Not my field, ma'am. But this was deliberate. And whoever sent it made sure you'd be here to receive it." Ortiz's gaze pinned me. "Do you have any idea who might have sent this?" The question burned in the air. Laura's eyes met mine, full of unspoken accusation. I shook my head slowly. Probably just some stupid prank. Ortiz didn't blink. "Most pranks don't involve live animals and Sunday delivery fees. Whoever did this had planning, motive, and your address." Ethan handed me a card. "We'll transfer it to a reptile rescue. But if you remember anything, tell the police. This isn't harmless." They left together, the cruiser and the animal control van pulling away. Silence settled in, thick and suffocating, broken only by the faint smell of disinfectant lingering in the air. Laura was the first to speak. "Mike—" "I know," I said, rubbing my temples. "The timing, the delivery, the fact it arrived today of all days. And the Reptile Palace charge," she added. "That $127. 50 transaction I'd seen on my credit card weeks ago. Brittany had emergency access. I'd told myself it was for the kids. But now, after the venom in her voice, after the threats, it was the dumbest lie I'd ever told myself." Laura's voice dropped, colder now. "You know it was her." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The truth was sitting in the room with us, just as real as that snake had been. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, that searing orange coil, the red blotches glinting under the living room light, the slow, deliberate hiss that seemed to vibrate in my bones. I felt Laura's nails dig into my arm all over again. Even in the dark, My ears strained, half expecting to hear that sound coming from somewhere in the house. By morning, the unease had hardened into something sharper. This wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was a need, a demand. I had to know. After breakfast, I scrolled to Brittany's name and hit call. She answered on the second ring, her voice sickly sweet and perfectly rehearsed the same tone she'd used whenever she wanted cash or had something to hide. "Dad, happy Father's Day, how's it going?" I kept my voice flat. "Interesting morning. You wouldn't happen to know anything about a strange package I got today, would you?" The pause was brief, too brief for someone genuinely surprised. "Package? No, what happened?" The words came quick, practiced. But it wasn't her answer that confirmed it, it was the sound behind her voice. Tyler's laugh. Not a startled laugh, not confusion, no. This was low, smug, and dripping with the kind of satisfaction you hear from a man who thinks he's just proven a point. My fingers tightened around the phone. "Just a mix-up with the delivery." I lied, each word tasting like metal. "Nothing important." She tried again, that edge creeping in. "Are you sure? You sound weird." "I'm sure. Enjoy your Sunday." I ended the call before the anger cracked my voice wide open. When I turned, Laura was standing in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, her expression unreadable, but her eyes heavy. "What did she say?" "Nothing," I said, but Tyler laughed. Her shoulders slumped, but her jaw clenched. "Mike, she could have sent anything. But she chose that. On Father's Day." I nodded slowly, which means it wasn't just a stunt, it was a message. And I got it. That afternoon I pulled my old leather portfolio from the office shelf. Inside was my history with Brittany, 30 years of bending, paying, excusing. I spread it across my desk like evidence in a trial. Bank statements showing the monthly transfers that had become as regular as bills. Receipts for rent, utilities, insurance years of plugging holes in a sinking ship. Checks labeled emergency assistance that had quietly become allowances. Screenshots of texts. Thinly veiled threats to keep Chloe and Logan from us if the money didn't come. Piece by piece, the paper trail spelled it out, decades of taking without giving. Not a cent repaid. Not a word of gratitude. Laura stepped into the doorway, her voice quieter now but harder. "What are you doing?" "Collecting proof," I said. "Not for the police. For me. So I never forget why this stops now." "Oh." Her eyes locked on mine, searching, testing. Finally, she nodded. "If you're going to end this, Mike, you can't flinch. Not once." "I won't," I told her. And for the first time since that box landed on my coffee table, I believed it. That evening, I shut myself in my home office. The house was still except for the slow hum of the ceiling fan overhead and the faint clink of dishes as Laura moved about in the kitchen. In front of me, the portfolio lay open pages spread like evidence on a courtroom table. Every canceled vacation, every wire transfer sent at midnight, every so-called emergency scribbled in the memo line, it was all here. 30 years of proof that I'd been more of a bank than a father. The glow of my computer screen seemed colder than usual as I logged into my online banking. My hands were steady, deliberate, like a man dismantling a bomb. First up, the credit card account. Brittany's name sat there, bold as ever, under authorized users. I'd added her in college, just in case. That case had somehow stretched into 2 decades of entitlement. I clicked Manage Users. The system prompted me for my mother's maiden name and the street I grew up on. Answers I could give in my sleep. Remove authorized user? Yes. A blue banner appeared. Changes will take effect within 1 business hour. Next, the PINs. I changed them all, checking, savings, even the line of credit. I chose numbers that meant everything to Laura, and nothing to Brittany our wedding year. Then came the bleeding heart of the problem, the automated payments. $1,200 monthly transfer, straight into Brittany's account. $380 for her car insurance. $65 for the gym she'd called essential for her mental health, though she rarely went. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Each click was a knot loosening in my chest, a chain snapping free. This wasn't vengeance, it was liberation. It was finally holding the right person accountable. When I finished, the summary was clean and final. Credit access removed. Automatic payments canceled. PIN codes updated. I leaned back, exhaling for what felt like the first time in years. For 3 decades, I had been her net. Tonight, I cut the cords. The next morning, my phone lit up at 8:12. Brittany. I let it ring twice before picking up. Good morning. Her voice hit like a siren, sharp, shrill, and already laced with fury. Dad, what the hell did you do? My cards declined, my insurance bounced, the rent. I took a slow sip of coffee. I stopped paying for your irresponsibility. You can't just cut me off without warning. I have bills, obligations. They're called responsibilities, I said evenly, and they belong to you, not me. Silence. I could hear her breathing quicken on the line. Then came the pivot, the syrupy voice, the wounded daughter act I'd heard 100 times. I'm struggling, Dad. You know that. Why are you punishing me for something I didn't even do? You sent me that package, Brittany. That's insane. Her tone snapped back to venom in a heartbeat. One little prank, and you completely lose your mind? I let the silence stretch until my next words landed heavy. A live animal isn't a prank, and cutting off 30 years of enabling isn't losing my mind. It's finding it. Her voice went cold. This isn't over, old man. You think you can control me by controlling the money? We'll see about that. The line went dead. When I looked up, Laura was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, having heard every word. She's coming here, she said quietly. I nodded, probably with Tyler. Her eyes searched mine. Are you ready for that? Yes, I said. And this time I didn't just mean it. I felt it. The roar of an engine shattered the quiet less than an hour later. Tires screamed against the asphalt, the sound slicing through the neighborhood's Sunday calm. 2 car doors slammed hard fast, purposeful. Laura and I locked eyes. We didn't need to say it. We both knew. The doorbell rang one sharp, impatient burst then again before I even reached the foyer. When I opened the door, Brittany stood there, cheeks flushed, hair wild, the smell of hastily applied perfume clinging to her. Tyler loomed just behind her, his jaw clenched, eyes like stone. Dad, Brittany began, her voice shaking not from fear, but from pure, boiling rage. We need to talk. We already talked this morning, I said, planting my hand against the doorframe. And I thought I was crystal clear. Clear? She barked out a single, humorless laugh. You were insane. Cutting me off over some ridiculous misunderstanding about a Father's Day package? There's no misunderstanding, Brittany. You sent me a snake. Tyler stepped forward, crowding the threshold. Look, old man, maybe you didn't think this through. Brittany's got expenses. The kids need things. Kids whose mother threatens to use them as leverage when she doesn't get what she wants. I cut in, my tone like ice. Brittany's voice spiked into a shrill register. Fine. You want to play hardball? You'll never see Chloe or Logan again. They'll grow up knowing their grandfather chose money over family. Once, that would have been the knife to my chest. Now it was just another insult. That's not a threat, I said evenly. That's a blessing. Because if you're willing to turn your children into weapons, maybe they're better off not seeing how that game is played. Her mouth fell open for half a second before snapping shut. Tyler's lips twisted into a sneer, and he stepped so close I could smell the stale bitterness of his coffee-laced breath. We know where you live, he said, voice low and loaded. We know your routines. You might want to think real hard before you make this permanent. Are you threatening me, Tyler? I'm saying, he leaned in. Don't expect us to go quietly. I didn't blink. If you choose not to go quietly, you're choosing to make this a police matter, not a family one. The air between us thickened, heavy with the kind of silence that precedes a bad decision. Finally, Brittany yanked on Tyler's arm and spun toward the car. They left without another word. But the way Tyler looked over his shoulder, eyes narrowed, jaw locked, told me this wasn't finished. When their taillights disappeared into the dark, Laura came to stand beside me. Her face was pale, but in her eyes was something fierce pride. You didn't back down, she said quietly. I can't, I replied. And now it's time to make sure we never have to live through this again. The next morning I picked up the phone and called Rebecca Lawson, the attorney who had handled our will, our property deeds, and just about every major legal matter in our lives for over a decade. Her voice was calm but sharp in the moment I finished explaining. Mike, this isn't a family disagreement anymore. This is harassment, intimidation, and you have more than enough to act on it. By that afternoon, Laura and I were in her downtown Raleigh office. Sunlight spilled across the polished mahogany desk, the air carrying the faint scent of paper and leather. Behind her, Shelves of heavy law books stood like soldiers, their spines worn from years of battle. "Start from the beginning," Rebecca said, flipping open a fresh legal pad. I laid it all out, Brittany's demands, the inheritance fight, the snake in the box, the phone call, the threats on our porch. Laura filled in the silences where my voice caught. Rebecca's pen moved without pause, her eyes scanning us with that steady, lawyer's gaze that told you she was already building the case in her head. When we finished, she set her pen down with finality. "First, we change your will. You want your assets to bypass Brittany entirely and go straight to Chloe and Logan, correct?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "In a trust fund for education, college tuition, tutoring, legitimate school expenses, only with an independent trustee she can't manipulate." Rebecca nodded. "Good. That protects the grandchildren while removing her incentive to dangle them as leverage. Second," she continued, "we file for a restraining order against both Brittany and Tyler. The threats, the delivery of a live animal, these aren't minor incidents. The court will take them seriously. Once it's in place, any contact calls, visits, even a text becomes a criminal violation." Laura's hand found mine under the desk, her grip firm. Rebecca leaned forward. "One more thing, document everything. Screenshots, call logs, voicemails. If they try to escalate, we'll bury them in evidence." The rest of the meeting was signatures, clarifications, and Rebecca's quiet efficiency. By the time we left, the will amendments were in motion, and the restraining order petitions were queued to file before the courthouse closed. 2 days later, Rebecca called me herself. "They've been served, it's official." That evening, Laura and I ate dinner in a silence that felt different, not tense, lighter, though not entirely free. "They'll be angry," she said quietly. "I know," I replied. "But now their anger is the court's problem, not ours." We were halfway through the meal when headlights swept across the dining room wall. Moments later, the doorbell rang 3 hard, deliberate jabs. Laura froze mid-breath. "You think it's—" "Probably," I said, pushing back my chair. "But remember, if it is, they're already breaking the law." I opened the door to find Brittany on the porch, eyes burning, Tyler close behind with his arms folded like a sentry. "You think a piece of paper's going to stop us?" Brittany spat. "No," I said evenly. "The piece of paper is just what gets you arrested when you keep this up." Tyler's smirk faltered, but his tone stayed oily. "You really going to call the cops on your own daughter?" "I'm going to protect my wife and myself," I said. "If that means calling the police on my own daughter, so be it." Brittany shook her head, letting out a bitter, humorless laugh. "You're pathetic. All those years preaching about family, and you toss us aside the second we need you." "Oh, you've needed me for 30 years, I said, "and I gave until there was nothing left. This isn't about family anymore, it's about boundaries." For the first time in our entire confrontation, neither of them had a ready comeback. Brittany muttered something low and sharp, turned on her heel, and stalked toward the car. Tyler followed, but not before giving me one last look, narrowed eyes, clenched jaw, the silent promise of trouble. Maybe it wasn't over, but for the first time in decades, I wasn't just bracing for the next hit. I was ready for it. 2 days passed after that last doorstep standoff. 2 quiet days that felt almost unnatural after years of chaos. Laura and I slipped back into routines we'd nearly forgotten. We had coffee on the porch before the sun burned off the morning haze, slow evening walks past neighbors' houses, dinners eaten without the heavy silence of waiting for Brittany's next urgent demand to light up my phone. On Thursday afternoon, the phone rang. Rebecca's voice came steady and decisive. "It's all finalized, Mike. The will changes are official. The trust fund for Chloe and Logan is in place, and the restraining order is active." I thanked her, set the phone down, and stared out the kitchen window. The street outside was calm. A couple walked their dog at an easy pace. Kids pedaled by on bikes, laughter cutting across the warm air. Laura stepped in, drying her hands on a towel. "Was that Rebecca?" "It's done," I said. "They can't touch us or the money ever again." She sat beside me, fingers curling into mine. We didn't speak at first. We didn't need to. The weight of decades' financial rescues, emotional blackmail, threats wrapped in family language was finally lifting. I thought about the little girl Brittany used to be, the one who handed us crayon drawings of the 3 of us holding hands, the one who proudly served burnt toast breakfasts on Mother's Day. That child was long gone. Somewhere along the line, she'd been replaced by a woman who saw her parents as an account to drain, not people to cherish. And it had taken a snake in a box on Father's Day literally for me to stop making excuses and see it for what it was. Cutting her off didn't mean I stopped loving her. If anything, it was the only kind of love left that still had integrity, love that refused to fund her self-destruction, even if it meant cutting her out of our daily lives. The trust fund meant Chloe and Logan's futures were safe money earmarked for college, tutors, anything to help them build something real without giving Brittany or Tyler a cent they could waste. The restraining order meant that our home, our peace, and the years we had left were shielded by the full weight of the law. That night, Laura and I sat on the porch, the air warm against our skin, the sun melting into the tree line. The neighborhood was quiet in a way I hadn't realized I missed. For the first time in 30 years, I didn't measure the hours by when the next crisis would arrive or what it would cost me. Sometimes love means saying yes. And sometimes the most powerful act of love is finally, definitively saying no.